Bring the meeting to order. Welcome to the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education meeting. It's 6:30 for the board ops. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to take the roll?
I'll take it slowly.
Take it slow.
Dr. Foreman.
Here.
Ms. Deeds.
Here.
Mr. Janice.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Dr. Rentel.
Here.
Always late.
No, right on time.
Right on time. Thank you. Accommodations? Excellent. Well, this is the best part of the evening because we get to commend either students, staff, or community members for tremendous work that they've done either throughout the academic year or in the community. So tonight, we get to recognize 13 GHS students recognized by the National Merit Program for their semifinalist or commended scholar award winning. So 13 is higher than we've had in probably 5 years and going back, I think, almost to 2003. So 13 for a school district our size is actually amazing. So now, I've been asked this. How many of you went to the preschool co-op? Raise your hands. Not the parents. But thanks, Casciatos. Okay. I heard a lot of you went to the same preschool co-op. I'm not saying that that's a pipeline to this scholarship, but it seems like they did pretty well. So first, I'd like to honor 5 Granville High School students that have been recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation for their high scores on the preliminary PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. These students qualified as National Merit semifinalists and will apply to earn finalist status. So this is, the finalist status is the top tier, and then semifinalist is the tier below, and then commended. It is tremendously difficult to achieve semifinalist status. So John Ball, Daniel Gibson, Zoe Guiney, Sage Kaplan-Golan, and Cameron Richards are our 5 semifinalists. Okay.
Pictures. I'm like right behind you.
They're going to be that way.
Stay up here because we're going to do pictures.
They're all hitting the angle right at the end.
Nice try. You look better than I do always. Yeah, Daniel, congratulations. And Sage. All right, now we're going to stand here and take a picture for all the paparazzi out there.
I got one for Instagram and then we'll do one for the website. Follow us on Instagram. Squish just a bit. Okay. That's probably gonna be some of the red pencil. One more.
Now stand over there because we're going to get the commended scholars up here and we're going to take a big picture. Okay. All right, so just some final words about the semifinalists. These academically talented semifinalists are among the highest scoring entrants in Ohio. Those who reach the finalist level will be notified in February, and National Merit Scholarship winners will be announced beginning in April 2016. So congratulations and good luck. I know there's some additional things that you guys have to do. We also have 8 high school students who were recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation as National Merit Commended Scholars for their outstanding academic promise after taking the PSAT, qualifying test known as the PSAT. So Aiden Anderson, Jack Boyd, Ben Bersoud, Nicole Casciato, Chris Carlson, Michaela DeGennaro, Allie Geyer, and Elise Morrison. Please come up at this time. Congratulations. Here you go. All right, Jack. Thank you. Congratulations. There you go. I know you're going to be wearing these pins tomorrow. Ladies. Congratulations. Aiden. There you go. Congratulations. All right, so now we're going to have to take a picture with this group, and then we'll get a whole group. Okay? Parents, feel free.
Squeeze together real close.
Yeah.
All right, Beth, you're up.
Well, I think that's a nice question. We'll say who.
All right, now let's all go over here and get the whole group. Sure, 2 rows. Well, let's see how bright you are.
I think one of these is yours too. Thank you. And while we're at it, could I get you to go ahead and open it? While everyone's looking that way. Thank you, ma'am. Yep.
Yeah.
Never seen.
All right, now pretend it doesn't hurt. Congratulations. Now, most of you are parents in the audience, and you know that they've worked really hard to obtain these awards. But what I'd also like to recognize is that many of them are successful in the classroom, on the field hockey field, on the track or cross-country court, on the stage, Zoe and several others. So they are successful in a variety of different activities that they participate in. And I think that's something that we really recognize in Granville schools, is that it's not just about academics, it's about being involved in your community and excelling in multiple levels. So congratulations, we're proud of you. And it's kind of nice because this is my daughter's class, so I know all of you by name, which is great, you know, this is fantastic. So congratulations again. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rob Walker, who is going to do our next commendation. and then you will be able to leave, I promise. But captive audience for just a little bit longer.
Thank you, Jeff. Members of the Board of Education, community members, and parents and students, on behalf of the Snyder Community Heart Watch in Lancaster, Ohio, Fairfield Medical Center, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to address you this evening. We're about to make an award, and this award is very special. Being a retired educator for 37 years, the first time I found out about this, Bob Williams, who heads this up at Fairfield Medical Center, came into my office and started talking about what it meant. And when I said, Bob, how often does this happen? Almost 500,000 sudden cardiac arrests each year. And I don't have all the diseases and cancers and things that you could add up together, and it still doesn't equal sudden cardiac arrest. And I said, Bob, we need to do this. We need our schools to be as safe as possible. Our kids, our staff, our community deserve this, and we owe it to them to make this as safe as we can possibly make it. So tonight, we're recognizing a couple community members, and I just have a little short speech here for them. The Rob L. Walker Heart Safe School Champion Award is presented annually during the month of October, which is Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month, to individuals who have displayed a passion to better prepare schools to respond to cardiac arrest. The award is presented by the SADS Foundation in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the Snyder Community Heart Watch in Lancaster, Ohio. Nominations are open to all accredited heart-safe schools across the United States. This year, we were pleased for the two that we have tonight to award 3 very, very worthwhile individuals. The 2015 award recipients that we will be recognizing this evening, Summer Thagard and Lee Priano. Would you please come forward? We are thankful for the opportunity to be here tonight, and I want to say that I think anybody that knows these two mothers know that they work tirelessly behind the scenes, getting all the schools in Granville to be accredited in May of 2015. They started the process in January of 2014. So you guys were very good. To achieve that in just over a year, that's fantastic. Again, providing district arranging meetings with district leadership, providing cardiac arrest information materials at basketball games, coordinating the compression-only CPR training for Granville students and staff, updated the AEDs, and assisted in the development of policies and procedures. On behalf of the SADS Foundation and the Snyder Community Heart Watch, it is my pleasure to present the awards to Summer Thagard and Lee Priano.
One more picture.
Sorry. Multiple cameras. Can you get just a little closer, Jeff?
Yep, sorry. Friday, we will be training all of our staff who have not been certified yet in CPR as well. So this Friday is a big training, and we want to put a shout out there for our fire department that always helps train all of our staff members. So they do a great job of volunteering their time and services. So congratulations, well deserved. I know it was a long journey. but we appreciate your leadership, so thank you. And now, at this time, the board is going to continue with their work, but if you want to leave at this time, we'll let you. Yeah. Sorry, Simon. I should have waited until you went. Yeah.
Sorry, Simon.
Yeah. He was like, no, really, it's okay.
You should have run when you had the chance. Hide in the crowd, hobble out.
The getaway would not be as smooth as
Yes, but the crowd would have hit
Now
you.
I'd like to introduce Simon to the podium to do his student report.
I can guarantee next meeting I will be walking up instead of crouching.
Yes, good. Positive attitude.
Thank you to the audience that did stay to watch me speak. I know I'm not nearly as interested as watching the students receive their awards, but I like to stay in a close second. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Krajewski, and I'm this year's senior class president. After the newness of this school year wore off, GHS returned back to its typical state. That was not a bad thing, I promise. To start, Latin Club held one of their annual blood drives, where 49 students over the age of 16 participated. As amazing as a turnout as this was, the Latin Club fell one short of their goal of 50 donations. In addition to the blood drive, National Honor Society held their annual induction event, where 51 new junior members participated in the candle lighting ceremony, putting National Honor Society well over 100 members. At this event, the seniors also received their cords for graduation. This event was organized for the most part by NHS senior officers. This Thursday marks the end of the first quarter, and I have to say the race is on for many students to quickly raise their grades. I'm not one of them, but I know quite a few who are. Just a quick insight into the month of November before I take off. The fall play, Steel Magnolias, will be on stage at GHS from Friday, November 6th through the 7th at 7 p.m. I highly encourage everyone in this room to participate in going to this event because Granville is very fortunate to have the talented students we have. And these students have worked extremely hard to put on the class act. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nice job, Simon.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But you're not allowed to leave.
You missed the window.
Have a good night, sorry.
You too.
Just a little board humor.
How did you spell that?
Yeah. Board. Oh, board humor? Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's see here. I promise this is going to be a relatively quick presentation on the OSBA recommended policy updates for October and November. As you are aware, the board goes through the revision process twice a year. The first one is October, November, and then March, April is the second round of policy updates. Most of the policy updates are related to legislative changes that have occurred during that time frame. So many of the things that I'm going to share with you tonight are a byproduct of that, that process. So let me make sure this is not plugged in.
You need the dongle, don't you?
Should I turn the lights back on?
No, I'll get it. There we go. Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do is highlight a few of the changes and briefly discuss them. So these are the recommended policy changes that we have from OSBA this year. The first one is school properties disposal. Really, this is related to some of the issues that we're having with property and charter schools. So as a high-performing community school, as defined by state law, we have to show that if we are disposing of a property, we have to identify that property and potentially offer it to a community or a charter school prior to selling it in some other fashion or form. Don't necessarily like this policy, however, it is a required policy based on House Bill 64, which was part of the budget bill. So unfortunately, if you don't pass it, we're in violation of law. So that's the first one. The next one, professional staff contracts. This is related to, let's see, I have it a little wrong. Was also part of the House Bill 64 legislation, and it creates an alternative pathway for new administrators in primary and secondary education for those not in the traditional path, so an alternative path. They're calling it the Bright New Leaders for Ohio Schools program. So it requires ODE to issue alternative principal and administrator licenses who successfully complete this program and satisfy the requirements. So this is also a required policy. Obviously, we like to hire people that have been in education and done demonstrated competency for many years and have some experience under the belt, and we feel happy to have our professional administrators. So that is the next one. Remedial instruction and reading skills assessment and intervention. Those three policies are all related to some changes in the administration of the third grade reading guarantee and the K-3 literacy initiative. So it's all related to timeframe changes. So it used to be that some of the documentation needed to be turned in by November. Now it's September 30th, so that we can start to initiate the reading improvement plans earlier. The November 1st has been left for kindergarten because it takes a longer time to complete those assessments, but it's all related to the third grade reading guarantee and the promotion and retention of students. And it really is just a time change or a date change. Okay? Graduation requirements. This change is part of the ongoing saga of what it takes to graduate. And the change that you will be approving is students entering the 9th grade for the first time on or after July 1, 2015 who are pursuing career technical instructional track may complete a career-based pathway math course or an alternative to Algebra 2. So it's just an alternative pathway based on those students that are pursuing a career technical path towards graduation. Cooperative educational programs. This is an alignment policy that really aligns us to CTEC as our joint vocational school district and the Licking County ESC. So these policies will align us to those two programs. You can choose to align with a number of ESCs. At this time, we are still aligned with the Licking County ESC, which means that certain funds get sent to them directly. Evaluation of professional staff. If you remember at the last board meeting, we did a policy updated about the evaluation of the teachers and some of the safe harbor provisions and some of the permissive language from ODE. We approved those last board meeting. This is related to principals. The principals relate exactly back to what we're doing with the teachers. So just a little nuance, just because it's the evaluation of principals, not teachers. And the other thing that will change also in the professional staff with teachers is there was a 45-day provision for students that were absent for 45 days, and now it's 60. Is that, or opposite? It was 60, now it's 45. Okay. And then school site-based management councils, both of those policies, CFA and CFAR, are being removed. There is no longer a statute requiring school site-based management councils. So those policies are being removed at this time. Any questions about any of the policy recommendations? And this is the first reading. We will have a second reading and action at the November board meeting. I know it's really high-level, interesting stuff, and I'm sorry that I have to, talk about it at all.
Do we update the cooperative education program every year just because we might switch
There's a requirement now to do that.
to do that?
It used to be that once you made a decision, it was like a 2 or 3 year commitment.
But now it's every year.
Any other questions?
No, just that site-based management is such a term from
The
past.
Yeah, yes,
the way back then.
it is. It is. Surprising it took us this long to get it out of the policy. So. Any other questions, comments? I'll invite Mr. Sobel up to wow you with the 5-year forecast.
Drum roll, please.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly, Jeff, I promise not to be brief, okay?
Are you,
Is it up somewhere? It's, joking. You froze. What'd you just do?
see Glenn, see what happens?
He's ignoring you on purpose.
You probably got earbuds in. No? I don't know. Michael, who's logged on?
Should be local line.
Okay. And then he's going to have to pull it off of SharePoint.
Do you want my computer?
No.
I can do it, I can check mine.
You can do it with mine. I've been having fun with it.
At this time, I'd like to call Ryan Bernath up to do a little entertainment. While we're... See? Ryan, how was that football game this weekend?
I still have that picture if you want to project it.
Yeah. As you all know, Ryan Bernath is a significant Michigan fan, as maybe a board president might be. So,
I'm not sure it's significant.
yeah. Shocking ending to a game.
I just watched it.
Yeah.
It didn't help but because he was on TV over and
Over and over.
It was reported though that the punter got
Oh.
Yeah.
Was this the Michigan? This is a milestone. This is the first time in my however many years I've lived in this state that I did not know that it was the Michigan game.
It
Not
was
Ohio
Michigan,
State.
Michigan.
Oh, I was going to say, no wonder. That
Yeah.
would be kind of impossible.
Yeah.
You guys are all making this big deal. I'm like, really? How could I have missed that?
Yeah, but at the end of the game it was back. Was it like 10 seconds left on the clock?
Yes. All he had to do was punt the ball.
On the ball.
He
Kind of
missed it.
Fumbled the snap.
The snap.
Oh.
And in the process of trying to kick it, threw it right to their guy, and he
Of
ran
course,
it in.
because he was totally stressed out.
Yeah. They are kids, and it's a game.
Exactly.
Well,
So it's not just me, huh?
I have a question for you, kill time. The class that you were reading to, was that, you said it was an AP English class? Was that 11th grade?
Yes. Yeah. Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, well, the reason I was, because my son just finished reading it, and I thought, oh, I know exactly what you're going through.
It's like when, you
Do you
know,
want
you have to
mine?
read like a biblical text.
Yeah, if he was a kid who
With my
swore, he would be
computer, I
swearing the whole
can't
time he
figure
was
out where I
reading
put
it.
Okay.
You know this off the top of your head, don't you, Mike?
I do, but no one can see it otherwise.
You want to pull this up?
Sorry about this.
You're just trying to add the length of your presentation.
Yeah.
That's true.
Building the suspense.
Yeah.
Patty.
Anticipation is growing.
Okay, do you want to hear about a really bad soccer injury?
What happened?
Yeah.
A week ago now, maybe 10 days ago. No, yeah, about 10 days ago. There was our JV team finishing the game against Wellington. 2 kids went up for a header.
Sorry about that.
Kid from our team, guy's nose completely collapsed. No nasal cavity.
All right, 5-year forecast. Remember, we have to do this twice a year, May and October. What we're going to start with is looking at compared to where we're forecasting in May, and then we'll move on to some of the other assumptions that we're looking at. On the revenue side, there's not a whole lot of difference between where we are now, where we were in May. We are in better shape on our state aid from where we were expecting to be because, back in May, we didn't know what the legislature was going to do with the budget. We were expecting to actually lose money because of the formula. The legislature updated the guarantee. So this year, we ended up at the same level of revenue as we were at last year, which is actually an increase in the 5-year forecast since we were projecting a decline. The only other really significant change in revenue is in other revenue. It's not a big dollar amount. We just from a couple of different sources, we're just doing better than we had anticipated where we'd be in May. Unfortunately, on the spending side, it's not quite so rosy. Our personal services, our benefits, and our purchase services are all quite a bit higher than they were at the May forecast. In personal services, the increase primarily 2 things. We do have 1.2 more FTEs than we were counting on in May. That would be a 0.3 intermediate school orchestra teacher, a 0.58 half-time science teacher at the high school, and then we had a teacher who was a 0.71 at the high school teaching math leave, and we replaced that with a full-time position. The latter 2 to deal with large numbers at the high school as far as enrollment. On benefits, 2 things primarily caused the increase. One, we have a lot more, well, not a lot more, but a number more family plans than single plans this year, both from some of our new employees and having a couple of employees who have not taken the health care in the past come onto our family insurance. And then we have a surcharge from STRS, the School Employee Retirement System. Every year there's a reconciliation because our payments are based on estimates. Some years they owe us money, some years we owe them money, and this is one of the years we owe them money. So they essentially under withheld from us as far as our STRS payments. In purchase services, there are 3 things going on here. we have seen a sharp increase in the John Peterson and autism scholarships from the state. A combination, we have more kids than we anticipate taking those, and in the budget, the maximum scholarships were increased from $20,000 each to $27,000 each. So the combination of those two, and you'll see a slide later showing exactly how much that really has gone up. And then we have also had significant increases in some of the services that we need to provide to students that are done in the form of purchase services rather than through additional staff. The third item which you don't see, about $50,000, that purchase service increase is just from a change in accounting for the College Credit Plus program. That actually in the May forecast appeared. There's one line item that's not on this graph, and it had been in that line item, and I just changed where we're posting that to, so it shows up in here instead of the other line item.
Can you just briefly explain for our vast audience and our online people, the Peterson Scholarship and Autism Scholarship programs?
Sure. Students who are residents of the district who have either autistic or some type of disability can take a scholarship or can get a scholarship. There's no income requirement or anything, which will allow them to go to a generally private provider of, usually it's services specializing in the area of disability that they have, such as autism. We have several kids going to the Marburn Academy, which specializes in autism type schools. They apply for the scholarship and they can get up to $27,000 depending on the level of disability.
And that's state law. It's state law, but it's funded by the school districts.
It is state law, but it is funded by, yes, basically we get to count those kids as our kids. So they do give us $1,900 for them, plus some waiting for the disability. And then if they choose to take the scholarship and go elsewhere, then we get deducted for up to $27,000 for each student that chooses to go to one of the other providers.
Thanks.
Okay, if we take a look again at the simplified version of the forecast and where we are now compared to May, the top part is May, the bottom part is October. If you look at fiscal year 19, which in May was the end of the forecast, amazingly, after all of the changes that we made and in all of our assumptions, our bottom line ending balance at the end of 19 is different from where it was in May by a total of $80, which is actually kind of surprising with everything we did. A big difference, though, is if you look at 17, and where we have been projecting almost $4.9 million balance at the end of 17 in May, we are now looking at a little under $4.3 million. So, we've really, it's about $550,000 that our forecast is weakened in the short run. We have made some different assumptions going forward, starting in 2018, about our growths in benefits and salaries, something that we will need to be more careful with because of our, the weakening position overall. Big thing to note, one of the big things to notice is, as we were in May, right now we are anticipating next year to start running an operating deficit, meaning we're going to start spending more than we're taking in. Back in May, we've been projecting $180,000. Now it's almost $520,000. That, of course, is a signal that we're starting to move towards the downward swing on the levy cycle, and we'll talk later on about that a little bit. So, question just about the general cash forecast here before we move on to some of the specifics.
Like just to frame for the audience members and those online, which I think I'll use again, talk a little bit about the levy cycles that are created in Ohio based on the reliance on property tax?
What
What a typical cycle looks like?
What a typical cycle looks like is because revenues are restricted from growing, the cycle is, as as we're coming, it's probably easier to start with the down cycle and then move into the up cycle. It's a little easier to see. But this is really what a down cycle looks like. As each year you start spending more than you're taking in, to the point where you start approaching having a negative cash balance. And you pass the levy, and then we kind of move back to where we were. If you look at the top part chart in 2015, of course, we passed the levy in November of 13. And so in fiscal 14 and again in 15 and again this year, we're taking in more revenue than we're spending, building up our cash balance. But because expenditures are, almost have to grow at a faster rate than revenue, when we don't have any sources of revenue that can grow to any substantial amount, eventually the expenditures grow at a faster rate at the revenue, and those paths cross, and you start spending more than you're taking in. You bring down the balance, you're at the end of the levy cycle, and you start it all over again. And so that's kind of how the cycle works. It's the combination of how the property tax system works and how the school funding system works, that you have that kind of mismatch in there. And most districts, a lot don't have the opportunity to get growth in their revenues.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a look at a couple minutes talking about enrollment and the enrollment projections. This graph, if you looked at this compared to the May graph, which I don't have up here, this does look quite a bit different than what we were forecasting in May. You see now we're not actually forecasting again a very slow increase in enrollment over the next 5 years. Remember in May, we have been projecting a very small decrease. And kind of the same trend, but in the opposite direction back in May. And what has changed in that period, you can see from the chart here. We picked up, through our net migration, meaning the net of new kids coming in versus moving out, we picked up a net of 81 new kids this year. We lost about 50 kids from the difference between their senior class going out last year and our kindergarten class coming in this year. We lost about 50, but we picked up 81 coming in, and that's why we are really doing better this year. We're at about 2433 right now at our enrollment. I was expecting us to be, if you see that, the column before that in May, down around 2395 or that. Yeah, I expect us to be down 11 kids or so from, from where we were last year. And instead, we're up 30 some. And you see where we're getting the growth. It's all in grades 1 through 6. The grades 1 through 6 are accounting for 77 of the 81 additional kids that we're getting. The two grades where you have the biggest difference from what we were forecasting in May, for the second year in a row, first grade, we have grown by over 30 kids from the number of kids coming forward out of kindergarten last year. And really 11th grade is a real anomaly. It's really unusual to have that kind of a bump like we had in 11th grade. We do have a number of fewer kids going to C-Tech this year than we have in prior years, is partly accounting for it. And for some reason, we had a number of new 11th graders moving into the district, which is, again, not a normal thing. So you can see at the lower levels, we have seen some bump ups in our enrollment. I'm kind of, with the housing market doing what it's doing, as it's picked up and some of the new construction going around the community, I'm expecting that this slow growth now to probably continue. So again, a little bit rosier outlook than we were talking about in May. And you'll see the impact of this when we talk about our forecast for state aid. And it will help us going forward in our forecast of state aid. Overall, and again, this is just looking at the forecast by grade. Next year should be the peak year of enrollment in the high school. We have this class of 200 going out this year. We've got an 8th grade class of 222 coming in behind it. And then the classes behind this 8th grade class are considerably smaller than the classes that are in front of it. So after next year, we will peak in the high school and start probably seeing a slow decline in our high school population. We'll start picking up a little bit again in elementary school as some of the classes are a little bit bigger than the classes that are moving into the intermediate school and then the middle school. So we'll see that little bit of switch over. Again, we're still not seeing anywhere near the numbers in kindergarten as we're seeing going out in the 12th grade classes from the prior year. So, that's really what's keeping us from really having strong growth in enrollment, is we're starting from that base demographic. Where if you look across the line right up here, 2020 is the smallest differential being forecast, and that's 49 kids that we're losing just from the switchover between kindergartners coming in and high schoolers going out. And that's what's really keeping overall enrollment from growing at a faster rate. And it's also the challenge to have the enrollment even keeping up with, on a flat basis going forward, that's a lot of loss-based students to make up through mobility. So that's the enrollment picture. Questions about enrollment before we start getting into a little bit more detail on the revenue and expenditures?
Mike, you haven't seen any changes in residential development to impact your forecast? It's pretty much where it was last year, right? So it's all,
we've
all
got,
migration.
we've got a couple more small developments that are a little bit more formed than we were looking at 6, 8, 10 months ago. The one up here on 661 to the north, or the development down on 37 to the south. Neither of those are huge developments. We're picking up a few more kids out of the apartments that are going up on River Road than I think we had anticipated, but again, it's not a flood of students that we're picking up there. Where the big potential developments are, the one up in River Road across from Park Trails. I haven't heard anything about that probably in a year and a half now, maybe 2 years. That seems to be a fairly dormant issue as far as I can tell. Same with the Craner property up on the other end, really not heard anything. And those are the only tracks where you have potential for large scale housing developments where there's significant amounts of land that can be developed.
And Mike and maybe Jeff, from kind of a staffing perspective with the moving bubble of students through the grades and things like that, are we going to be able to reallocate staff effectively? Is that addressed here in a minute? Or
there's a slide that Mike references, but you can see on this slide that in 2016, right there, you see the smaller class, and as that class is coming through, we're right-sizing that grade level and shifting it down to a lower grade level that has higher enrollment. So we try and adjust our staffing based on what the enrollment projection is, and if we have to add, we will, but we're trying to reallocate the existing staff based on what the numbers say as much as possible, and then save the hiring for the necessary bubbles.
Yeah, and again, where we're really pushing up against our capacity is right here. As you can see, these size classes in 1st through 3rd grade are getting gradually bigger. and we're starting to push up against capacity in those 3 grades. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some of the revenue details here real quickly. General property tax on real estate. This is 63% of our budget, so this, this is a big deal what's going on here. Main thing here is 2017 in Licking County, we will go through our sexennial reappraisal. The forecast right now is for a 6% increase in valuations at the time of reappraisal. Keep in mind that's a 3-year change, so that's roughly 2% a year for 3 years. The data I've been looking at lately are very supportive of the 6% and maybe potentially a little bit more than that if the market continues the housing market continues as it's been over the last probably year to year and a half. The data that I've been looking at, especially in the township, in Granville Township, it looks like between 2013 and 14, prices increased in the township about 10%. Very healthy growth in housing prices in the township. Little less so in the village. Pretty strong growth in the west side of the village. Pretty weak market still on the east side of the village, especially at some of the high ends of the east side of the village, where prices have not held up as well. But other than that area, the prices have been very strong. But again, you see, why don't we see then a 6% growth? Because you can see the way the property tax system works right here, that we're going to lose almost 1.5 mils of tax. Because the way the system works, as valuations are going up because of reappraisal or triennial update, your millage rate is rolled back down to make up for that. Again, you saw that happen to a much smaller extent in 2014 at our triennial update. We got about $7.5 million of growth, but lost $0.5 mil of tax rate. So, we didn't get very much growth off of the increases in the valuations. State aid, we're just going to there's a lot of numbers on here. We'll just concentrate just on where I have a couple of things marked. The big thing to notice, and this is a big difference, is if you come into our final funding amount, you can see this year, as I said, we're on the guarantee this year flat with what we got last year. Next year, because of the strength in our enrollment, especially this year, I am anticipating us coming off of the guarantee and going on to the formula next year, and that providing us a bump of about $80,000 in state aid. So not a huge amount of money, but a bump. Bigger bumps, couple $100,000 a year out in the out year starting in 2018, assuming that the formula we have in place right now stays in place, which I actually am much more comfortable assuming that now than I would have been in May. But I think that there's a good chance that the current system or something very much like it may stay in place now. The couple other things, one of the things that was added here, there was a graduation bonus and a third grade proficiency bonus that were added. A lot of that was added to help wealthier school districts. All school districts do get them, but as you can see, it's adding about $43,000 onto our total aid, so it's not a game changer. Much like when the casino tax came on, that was not a game changer either. So it's not a huge chunk of money. We are expected to suffer kind of a big drop in our transportation aid because of a change in the formula. And as much as I don't want to admit it, what they did probably makes sense, that we are losing money, because what they've done is they have lowered overall transportation aid and moved a lot of that extra money into the line below there, which is supplemental transportation, which are for districts that frankly have a lot more challenges getting their kids to school than we do, when you look at the amount of area that they have to cover and how spread out their kids are as far as their densities. And so they have moved more of the funding into the districts that really have more significant transportation costs than we do as far as what it takes getting kids to school. So that's probably not a bad change, even though, we do suffer from it, but not, again, it's hard to argue with the change that was made from an equity standpoint. That's really all I wanted to go through as far as revenues before we move to expenditures. Any questions about either these revenue assumptions or any other things I didn't really show in here? Of course, these are our two biggest pieces of revenue by far. These two combined make up about almost 90% of our revenue that we get for operations. So the others, well, there may be some volatility, aren't making a huge difference in the long-term outlook of the district.
A quick question about, the upcoming reappraisals and
Mhm.
changes to millage, right? How much of the reappraisal amount is driven by real estate transactions whereby the price is higher, and how much of it is driven by reappraisal of existing homes that are reappraised in the process?
All of the change, all of the change that's affecting this right here, causing the millage rate to drop, all of that change is because of changes in prices of existing property. New construction is not impacting that calculation.
Okay.
New construction comes on, and we get additional taxes on new construction. Our tax rates are not lowered just because new homes are coming in. So really, all of this change, sure, some of the additional valuation that's in here is from new construction. This is a blended number. Yeah.
I think
But
what
there's
he's asking was, is it both existing homes being revalued and existing homes that are transferring ownership and the sale price is higher? Is it both of those that go into that?
What goes into, theoretically, because it's a sexennial reappraisal, what's supposed to happen is that the county auditor, using either his own appraisers or most hired appraisal firm, they're supposed to make a visual inspection of every parcel in the county. That's kind of a difficult task. You started about a year and a half before. They're probably gearing that up right now. They're probably starting that process right now for the 2017 reappraisal. But what happens is they'll make an assessment that way, and they turn it to the Department of Taxation. But what the department will look at is they'll look at the actual home sales, and they'll look at how homes are selling relative to what they're valued for, and that's what they're kind of benchmarking the overall valuation change based on. So if the department's looking at home sales and they're getting an idea, okay, it looks like in Licking County, and they're looking countywide initially, saying, it looks like from all the sales, which is the data the department gets, that values are going up by 5%, okay? And then the Licking County auditor turns in a reappraisal, and if they turn in a reappraisal for 15% or -3%, the department's going to say, hold on a minute here. That is not consistent with what we're seeing in the sales data. And so the department's going to want to see something that calibrates with the transaction data, because that's really the only place that you can get a measure of how prices are doing relative to what they're valued at, is when they're turning over in arm's length transactions. And that's really so you're kind of using one to accommodate the other and to account for the other as well.
It's just kind of an interesting thing that the millage changes, and it might be a messaging point that we can make to just drive home this point that, like, okay, the way that school districts are funded in Ohio is that overall revenue does not increase over time based on this, right? And since
Correct.
there's a milestone there of a change in millage, it might be another opportunity to like message that when the time comes,
Correct.
right?
So in essence,
To explain the
what
system,
this
it's a
is,
little complicated, doesn't hurt.
yeah, what this is saying is
Yeah.
we have 43.57 mils that, you know, that in 16, and we're gonna lose 1.45 of that, which is what, about 3%?
Mhm.
Something like that. So we get about a 3% drop in our millage rate because of the increase in the value.
And that's a byproduct of House Bill 920 in the 70s that
Right.
created the current levy system that we're in,
Right.
Right.
which is the cost reduction. Yeah.
And so it's not like individual taxpayer bill in dollars goes down, but the millage number goes down.
If,
right?
what happens to
Yeah.
what happens to an individual taxpayer, and this is something when I do my presentations on property tax law, what happens to an individual taxpayer depends on what happens in their home relative to the population as a whole. This is a jurisdictional measure, basically saying from these levies on this property, after the reappraisal, you have to be generating the same amount of money as you were generating the year before, and that's what that 1.45 mil drop does. If you're in an area where, if, you know, let's say I'm right and there was a 6% decrease or increase in values overall, if you're in an area where you only get a 2% increase in values, you're going to see a lower tax bill. And if you're in an area that has a 10% increase in values, you're going to see a higher tax bill. It's basically because it's lowering it as if you went up by 6%. If you actually went up 10, you're paying more, and if you actually went up 2, you're paying less. The only people who will be paying the same amount is if their home moved at exactly the jurisdictional wide average. Then they would see an exact offset of their increase in value and their decrease in tax rate.
Like, I think it's also important to notice the business tax rate.
The
So-
business tax rate is significantly higher
Mhm.
than the residential tax rate. Again, you can see that out here. Businesses are paying about 14.5 mils more than residents are paying on their property. You see, there's actually a little bit bigger change in the out here in this rate, but that's because it's starting percentage-wise. That's actually lower than that. But from a pure millage, it's a little bit higher because it's starting from such a significantly higher base rate.
Which is consistent with our conversations about economic sustainability, because our class 2 is significantly smaller than the state average of, comparable districts.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions about revenue? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to expenditures. Salaries are about 55% of our total spending. And you can see the note here in the 5-year forecast, as Jeff was talking about earlier, and as I was showing with the size of the classes, we have not made final decisions, but we are budgeting it as if we are going to need one additional teacher each in first, second, and third grade next year. We always need one teacher less in 5th grade because of that smaller class that's trailing the bigger class. And we've been losing a teacher with that class each year as it's been going through. So the forecast does have a net increase of 2 teaching positions next year built into it. Again, that's not a final decision that's been made, but we wanted to make sure we set the money aside in case we do need to go down that path, so that the money is set aside to pay for it. Again, as we look at our class sizes and determine how we want to move forward as we move into the spring. You'll see last year in 2015, we were spending about the same amount on salaries as we were in 2012, even though still a little bit less. That the biggest reason is because of the decline in personnel we had in the 12-13 school year, or prior to the 12-13 school year, to kind of right-size things and to respond to the difficult financial situation as we were in back there prior to going to the ballot. Benefits, these are about 25% of our spending. You'll see a little bit, it is an increasing percentage. And quite honestly, that slope that we're seeing in the red bars in the bottom graph is not a sustainable slope. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. It is growing at a rate that is just cannot be sustained in the long run. We were facing, and are still facing, Cadillac tax issues. The memorandum of understanding that we did with the association last month has helped a lot and will help a lot in the short run to give us time to do further planning with the Cadillac tax. It will pretty much ensure we will stay off of the Cadillac tax in the first year. So it's not something we are facing immediately as we come out of our current contract and negotiating the next contract. That's a good thing because it gives us opportunity to plan and to be flexible. But something has to be done as far as the growth rates that we're seeing here. We're going to have to look at the combination of what's going on in our benefits and what's going on in our salaries, and really purposefully look at both and say, okay, between the two, there is only so much we can afford to grow, and have to look at ways to stay within the combined, what would be reasonable growth rates between the two sources. I think in the past there's been a lot of looking at, well, salaries are here and benefits are here. And the benefits, because of the size and the growth rates we're seeing, we just can't look at it that way anymore. We've got to look at it as, it's one package of compensation for employment. And they're not separate items. That really cannot be viewed as separate items anymore.
Mike, in discussions with your colleagues in other districts throughout the state, we're not unique in this situation. It's
people are all over the place. I was talking today, I was at a meeting midday and talking to the treasurer in Hilliard, and he's saying, we're trying to explain this stuff, and here I am in Hilliard, he actually got a 0 this year in healthcare. Upper Arlington, right next door to him, had plus 22%. It's one of the, how do you, districts are just all over the place. They're, for whatever reason, they're just as we are. We've, if you think about it, in the last 3 years, we've had a -5 and a +20 within that 3-year period.
It's tough to make a 5-year plan based on numbers that can vary so much. And certainly the association worked with us this year in order to solve the immediate issue of the Cadillac tax, which when we put the agreement in place, we didn't think we were going to have an issue with.
No, we thought with the last agreement that we had made enough design changes, but we've been hurt by utilization. And you just can't predict or really do much about utilization. It just, things happen that are outside of the control. But we need to be more diligent about doing things to, as much as we can, control. We can control what we can control.
Right.
Then we need to work to make sure we are controlling what we can control.
It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of creativity and collaboration in order to try and get a come up with a plan that's
Yeah,
workable.
it
given-
will, but
given all the
it's-
variables.
It's discussions that we're starting now. You know, we're gonna start some of these discussions in the insurance committee. I think we're gonna meet either next month or in early December, and start having some of these discussions about how to deal with what happens effective January 1 of 2018. Purchase services, the top left part just kind of illustrates what we talked about as far as the Peterson and autism scholarships. If you take a look there, we spent $68,000 in fiscal year 14 on the combination of those two. This year, I'm expecting that to be over $212,000. So just in that one line item, we have almost over $150,000 of increased expenditures in 2 years. And again, it's something we have no control over. Whoever takes the scholarships, we need to fund them. You see a big jump, the big jump right in here, 15 to 16 in our spending. There's a big piece of it right there, and there's Peterson scholarships. Again, part of that is because of how we are dealing with College Credit Plus. And then we have also just have a lot of student needs that we are meeting through contractual agreements to handle things that have come up. Overall, you look at revenue and spending, real estate is staying at a very constant 63, 64% of our total revenue. You do see unrestricted aid from the state slowly creeping up a percent. You know, we're at 23 and 13, 24 now, 25 and 19. So we are getting a little bit of money from the state. The bottom part of this, what really stands out is you look at the salaries, which have gone from 57% in 2013 to 53, and then 52 projected in 19. It's not that salaries are going down. It's that the benefits, which are climbing from 23 to 29% of total spending, are just growing at a much more rapid rate, as we saw in the graphs earlier, than our salaries have been growing. So it's just becoming a larger and larger piece of the pie. Cash balance still looks good. We are still through the end of fiscal year 17 maintaining at least equal to, if not above, the cash balance guidelines that the board approved last year. We are anticipating staying above there. As we move out from 2017, this will become increasingly more difficult to match the guidelines on a consistent ongoing basis as we start seeing erosion in our overall cash situation. Quickly, we want to talk about the capital budget. Normally, we would have done this actually as part of the May forecast, not the October forecast. But because we're going through the facilities study back in May, so we held off on doing a capital budget until we had a better idea of the facilities.
And you have a copy of that facility study in your packet today.
If, again, the big line item that sets out, you see the capital project line in 2016 is almost $900,000. Part of that is money that we've been holding for 2 years to do the bus garage replacement, which we have now decided we are not going to do because the cost of that project has kept going up, and the bids came in significantly above where we really needed them to be, and we're given an alternative idea that looks like it's going to be feasible to be able to move the administration of the bus garage back into an office area in the garage itself, and we should just be able to tear down the current modular building that the administration is out of, and remove the eyesore from our property and move on like that, which will let us, reallocate that money to other projects that we have significant needs for. The main thing I want to kind of point out here, which is going to move us on to the last slide, is if you look at the projected revenue in the top right corner, we got to 2020, you will see an $80,000 drop in the projected revenue. That is because the capital budget is funded by three different things. It's funded by the PI levy, which makes up about 70%, the half-mil maintenance levy, and the Newark Granville Community Authority assessment, which each make up roughly 15%. The half-mil maintenance levy expires in 2019 and by law cannot be renewed. So that levy has to go away in 2019. It is not money we cannot just live without. We're, with the aging of our buildings and the needs we have, we probably have more needs for capital money than we have capital money available right now. And so,
Mike, before you leave that, go back. Just if you drove north on 661 today, Team Fishel was pulling wiring across telephone poles. That was related to that fiber optic wiring project. It's actually happening right now. I saw them. I clapped as I went by. I had both hands on the steering wheel though. But that has been almost a 2-year process to get that fiber optic wiring, which creates a direct fiber line that we own between the high school, which is our main line, and the elementary and district office. Very similar to what we have from the high school to GIS. We have a direct fiber line, which really it helps in the overall functioning of our infrastructure. But fingers crossed, it's moving forward. Right, Glenn?
They're still saying the end of October.
Excellent.
okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So what I want to do then is just sort of start a discussion talking about, yes, the L word, levies. Again, based on the forecast and everything we have said, we are not, planning and expecting to be on the ballot before 2018 for additional money. But we have these other challenges that we're going to have to deal with around the same time. Our PI levy expires in 19, which we can renew again. The half-mil levy expires in 19, which we cannot renew again.
When does the Newark Granville start to?
Well, that's the bottom thing there. The Newark Granville Community Authority money in the special assessment will start phasing out in 2021. It is a 20 mil special assessment that began when the homes were first occupied. It's not based on the current occupant, and it's based on initial occupant, and the first of those started opening up in 2001. And so in 2021, beginning then, those assessments will gradually be falling off. Most of it over the first 5 or 6 years, because that's when most of the building was going on before the housing market crashed. And so that will be going away. We will have the opportunity for the bond millage rate to go down by probably $0.5 mil. But again, in 2019, due to the refunding that we just did last month. So we have a lot of issues to deal with in the 2018-2019 period as far as our tax structure and how we want to do this and without, possibly without constantly being on the ballot several times in a 2-year period. These are all discussions that we really need to start sooner rather than later because there are options for doing things. They are not necessarily simple options, and they'll take some education, if we want to move down that road. So starting now, minimum 2.5 years before we're first on the ballot, probably the earliest we will be on the ballot is May of 2018 at the primary election. That's 2.5 years away. That sounds like a long time, but it's probably an amount of time that we're going to need to do education. If we're going to do anything other than just, put a new levy on the ballot in 18 and go back and renew the PI levy, probably with an increase to make up for the half mil we're losing, and the Newark Granville Community Authority money, which we'll be losing. Yeah, that's the simplest thing to do. It may not be the best choice of things to do from a long-term perspective. And really anything else is going to take education and a knowledge and buy-in to what is happening. So with that, I will stop if you have questions.
I have a question. What mechanisms out there allow allow school districts to grow their revenue?
There's only two ways that you can have revenue that grows beyond, everybody gets inside millage that grows. We have 5.2 inside mills out of our total, effective rate of 42 or 43. About 1/8 of that can grow.
And does it grow by what rate?
It grows at whatever rate valuations grow.
Okay.
It grows at the rate of valuations. It also declines if valuations go down. It declines if the rate valuations go down. Beyond that, there's only two real ways to get growing revenue. One is to be at the 20 mil floor, and that, frankly, is not an option for us. There is no practical way of getting to the 20 mil floor with, from being over 40 mils right now, it's really hard to get to 20. The other is to have some form of an income tax, which schools are allowed two different options for income taxes. A traditional base tax, which is the same base as the state taxes, or an earned income tax, which is more along the lines of what a municipal income tax is, but it is only on the residents, not on, suppose a municipal income tax where it's first collected based on where you work, not where you live. A school income tax, while the base is similar to municipal tax on an earned income base, it is only on the residents regardless of where they work. And those are really the only two ways to get growing millage. I mean, there's some, there's incremental levies that you can use that they kind of act like they're growing, but they're really growing because the tax rate's increasing. They're not growing just because the economy is getting better.
And are income taxes required to be renewed, or can they be permanent levies?
They can be they actually have a little more flexibility than property taxes. They can be for any number of years or permanent. Property tax can be either for up to 5 years, for an operating property tax up to 5 years, or permanent. So there's some kinds that can be up to 10 years and not permanent. But income tax can be any period of time or continuing.
Any other questions for Mike? No?
So, sorry, I'll just dominate the conversation.
Go for
That's
it.
all right.
Go for it.
So really, if I hear you correctly, what we're looking at is not only just the sustainability of the operating fund, but ways to address the permanent improvement
Right.
needs of the district, which goes back to the facility study, because there are some changes, although not in 18, but in 19 and 21, that impact our revenue stream for some of those critical services.
Right. And this is,
Or
and it's
facilities.
not like you can look at the two of them independently of each other. If we don't have the money in the capital part of it to do the necessary capital planning and services, well, it's going to have to come out of the operating budget, because we can't let Yeah, either that or we can, I guess I could come out of the supply budget, we can buy buckets when the roof starts leaking. But if you want to plan other than buying buckets when the roof starts leaking, if you don't have the capital money put aside to do it, it's got to come out of the operating, because it's the only two places it can come from.
I think it's healthy to look at it in a consolidated way, because I've heard a lot of frustrations from community members that feel it all comes from the same place from their perspective, right? And the fact that we have internal accounting differences based on our levies and the way we structure our, purchase and acquisition and things like that is a little artificial, just internal, right? Because again, from the tax basis perspective, it's one bucket. So I think looking at it holistically, right, makes a lot of sense. And it's tough enough to communicate just, one aspect of it, because of the complexities of the tax law. But I think it's worthwhile, and I commend you for putting it up here now, so we can start as a community to think about, which of these, channels we want to use and how that's going to all play out. Even if it is a couple years out, it makes sense to start thinking about it now. So thanks for bringing that.
Anything else? Mike? No? All right, thanks, Mike. Board discussion?
Okay. I would like to frame the discussion slightly before you entertain the conversation or discussion. Later in the agenda, there is an action item that is a resolution opposing House Bill 70, which usually we like to oppose legislation prior to it being enacted. This is actually in opposition of legislation that has already been passed. And I think that the point is that the way that this legislation was passed is not something that we would like to see our General Assembly and or governmental agencies like the State Board of Education and or ODE operate in the future. And I think it sets a very dangerous precedent that something is done to a local community behind closed doors in a very rapid fashion that completely eliminates the local control provision for that elected body. So it's called the Youngstown plan. You've probably heard about it. But basically what happened was a restructuring occurred that eliminated the local Board of Education's authority and placed that authority in the hands of a CEO, not the superintendent that the board elected at that time. So really my reasoning for bringing it to you to potentially consider as a resolution was that it's a slippery slope. Once it starts in one community, it can become something that spreads. And I think what we value in Granville is what you guys do, which is you govern this school district from a policy and a hiring perspective, and you set the course annually for us to achieve our objectives. And I think that local control is something that we want to make sure that we reinforce to the General Assembly and to ODE that we value. So you have a copy of the resolution. The resolution was over on the table for anybody else who is interested in reading it. But I think it's something that I would feel more comfortable sending as just an afterthought to the people who are making decisions that we value local control.
It's an afterthought, but only in part because we were forced to make it an afterthought because they only had 2 days of discussion on the amendment. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of time to object to it before it was passed. It didn't take in, it just took effect October 15th.
Yes.
Of this, so just recently. But I still think it's an important message to send to the state that, if they're just chipping away at our ability to determine what we think is appropriate for our students. The CEO, there's no, I was just doing a little bit of reading about it, but it's not clear who oversees the CEO. It's not clear how staff reports to the CEO. The CEO is selected by 3 people appointed by the state superintendent, 1 appointed by the mayor of Youngstown, and the last committee member is by the board. But basically it's state the state is saying who the CEO is. But just again, one of those situations where the legislation was passed so quickly, without any kind of vetting or any kind of discussion, no testimony on it. And like you said, I think it's just bad process and bad policy. There was very little input from Youngstown in the movement in this direction, which is, I think they're trying to fight it still, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, so
They are.
again, so then it's not completely inappropriate to be
Correct. Showing
voicing our
support,
for it.
yes.
So, and again, as you said, it's a slippery slope. You know, this doesn't directly affect us, but, you know, chipping away at local control, it could down the road.
Absolutely.
Is this the same setup, or is this different from what happened with New York?
I'm not familiar with what happened with New York. It is somewhat similar to what happened to Cleveland.
So was there
but-
legislation passed with regard to Cleveland?
Yeah, Cleveland has a separate set of governance that's
Yeah.
in the law. In their case, the superintendent of schools in Cleveland is actually appointed by the mayor of Cleveland.
Prior to this,
It's been in place
It's been probably
for,
law 8-10 years now, I
8-10
would
years.
guess.
right, but
at
I
least.
mean, that was the law that
yeah.
changed for them. It wasn't that he was always appointed by
No,
them.
no, no,
Correct.
no. They had a 7-member school board and operate just like any other school board until the Cleveland plan came into being and the mayor was given control over.
But that legislation was specific to Cleveland.
Yeah, it was specific.
This one
This
is,
is specific to Youngstown.
Although the language is pretty
The,
general.
the language is much broader in this piece of legislation than it was in Cleveland. But it is
So
specific to
it could apply
Youngstown.
Anybody who's in academic distress.
Yes,
So anybody who moves into that category, I don't know if that's the right word, but.
it is.
This process could happen to them. So it's not, I mean, it happened because of Youngstown's situation, but it's not specific to Youngstown, whereas Cleveland, it actually says Cleveland
Yeah.
in the legislation.
Correct.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I share the concerns. This was an admittedly woefully performing school district, but they didn't sneak up on anybody. And the urgency or short cycle in which they considered the legislation, passed the legislation, which effectively results in a state takeover, without apparent accountabilities or obvious accountabilities is a concern. And if, as you said, it's a potentially slippery slope, it could happen there, it could happen other places. I wouldn't say that there's never a role for the state or the ODE to play in this process, but it ought to be guided by transparency, and I think that was not apparent here. And so I'm concerned that there's a loss of local control without obvious accountabilities and parameters for how the locals regain control. Does this go on interminably, or at what point does it revert to the local school board? I just think the process is, it was poorly handled, and it's should be of significant concern to anybody who believes in local accountability.
Anything else to add? No? Okay. At this point in the agenda, we've reached public comments. If there's anybody who would like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you can speak for up to 5 minutes. Anybody? No? Ryan? Gail?
Dave? No, thanks.
No? Okay. All right. Board reports. We just have one tonight. Thomas?
Oh, yeah. I was not able to attend the Granville Education Foundation meeting last week, but I did hear that they have approved grants of up to almost $13,000 for 5 grants that will be funded in this fall cycle. Many of them are from Granville High School, but it's a great series of grants. I could read through them if we need to, but otherwise, it's fantastic that GEF is continuing to contribute. That was, I believe, all of the grants that were proposed were funded, one of them hopefully in cooperation with the Music Boosters, and it's great that GEF is reaching out across the organizations to be able to coordinate that as well. So I think that's, was there any highlights in the GEF meeting?
Well, I didn't attend as well. I was being the scorekeeper and timer for the field hockey game, but Ryan attended. I think what I would highlight as far as the grant cycle was that they did support the movement in the classroom grant that was written as a byproduct of the innovation process. So that was a pilot that Allison Terry, Tanya Sherburne, and several others from the innovation process that were a part of that movement in the classroom group put together the proposal, and we're getting a couple of different varieties of movement devices and desks into a couple of pilot classrooms. So we're excited about that. And then there's a couple of great ones, like, Samantha Schnabel has the electric violins, which, I just can't wait because it's going to, lead us to like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra or something like that. It's going to be cool. So there are a lot of great things that I'm looking forward to seeing in action.
Yeah.
We appreciate the Granville Education Foundation and what they do.
And I wanted to give a couple updates on superintendent committees. I attended the World Class Education Committee meeting that included some public community members looking at our initiative for project-based learning and some other issues around world-class education. And the group there was really enthusiastic toward the process that's starting now in the district, following our innovation process. And I think this is going to be a really healthy process for a whole community to go through. And I know that the community members on the World Class Education Committee are excited about contributing in a way. And I think this is a great opportunity to see how we can engage more community members that are passionate or have experience with aspects of education in that, as well as potentially a board member. With Katie coming off the board this year, it might be a good time for a board member or upcoming board member to get involved, because I think this is really going to be kind of the heart of curriculum moving forward and staying in tune with, how we evolve and define even, project-based learning for our district. I think is going to be really exciting. So I'll kind of pass that invitation out there, as Katie hands off the baton at the end of her term to somebody else to get involved and learn more about what project-based learning is like.
Yeah, our next meeting with the cohort that is crafting the 3 to 5 year plan is November 2nd. And I've attended a couple of different professional development opportunities with a couple of administrators and teachers, and it's exciting work. It's a lot of fun. I'm excited to see how this process evolves.
Mm-hmm. And
with the staff.
there's how many staff members that are actively participating?
We have 24 staff members that are participating in that.
Across grades?
Across grades and levels and content areas. Yep.
It's great.
Any questions for Thomas?
No, thank you.
Okay. Action agenda?
Okay, action item 11.01, leave of absence.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Dr. Rantel.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Okay, 11.02 is an unpaid leave of absence.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Don't stop us now.
Take the roll.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Dr. Rantel.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
My favorite.
Okay, item 11.03 is a resolution to change providers for the supplemental benefits from our previous provider to Mutual of Omaha.
So moved.
Second.
Through you all.
You did?
And these are completely voluntary offerings. The board does not fund these offerings. Accurate? Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Rantel.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Okay. And the next item I am going to amend because I'm going to lump in the high school approval for the same, for a similar opportunity. So action item 11.04, overnight field trip for the Granville Middle School Youth and Government Group to travel to Dublin. but I'm also going to add in the Granville High School Youth and Government Group will travel to the YMCA Camp Campbell Guard in Hamilton, Ohio for October 30th through November 1st. Okay, and then Mr. Stewart is going to be taking his group, leaving November 22nd and returning November 24th.
What were the dates for the high school?
I have it written down for you.
Thank you.
So moved.
Oh, Amy got it.
Amy and then Ralph. Amy first, Ralph second. Any questions?
It's very exciting stuff.
It is. I think it's a great opportunity for kids to see what the legislative process should be.
Just saying. Any other questions or comments? Take a roll,
But
please.
they've been elected.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
You get what you vote for.
Okay, 11.05, temporary contract extension for psychological services. Jill Riggs has agreed to continue to December 1st.
So moved.
Second.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
gratitude.
with gratitude,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Take a roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
11.06 is the resolution against House Bill 70.
So moved.
Second.
Might have been the fastest one ever.
She's trying to hit my deadline for us.
Oh, nice.
Well, I do feel strongly about this one.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? No? Take a roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you.
You send that to OSBA?
Yes, we send it to the support agencies, and there's a listing of General
I'll take care
Assembly.
of sending it to whoever we're supposed to send it.
Yes.
But there's a number of places where.
Yeah, State Board of Education, Public.
There are other districts doing this, I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yes.
Yes. Next is the consent agenda, 12.01A through C4.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a couple of things I'd like to highlight quickly. If you see in the donations, our PTO is supporting additional books for the book room at GIS, a $10,000 donation to purchase smart boards, assessment kits, and leveled books for the book room, a $5,000 donation from Kiwanis to the GHS band for the Peach Bowl trip, and then a couple of other donations to the band as well. Love that. I think it's fantastic. So we appreciate all of the public
Little
entities.
side note, they marched with OSU, I mean, not OSU, OU.
Yes.
This weekend, so we traveled down to Athens.
Yes.
Yeah. and-
Bright and early.
Bright and
Yeah.
early, yes. Ooh, I heard about that. But they said, I talked to a band member, he said it was a really good time.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of other high school bands there, but
That's great.
another great experience. so.
I'd also call your attention, we do now have bowling coaches, so we will have a bowling team this year. And our girls swimming coach is being hired, but we also have a boys coach that has agreed to support that program as
Great.
well. And that's it.
Lots of good news.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Any questions or comments? You sure? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Okay.
The financial report for September.
So moved.
Second.
In the spirit of time, I think I will forego the actual report. I mean, you've pretty much heard everything in the 5-year forecast, then some. So there's really not, if you have questions about anything in here, let me know. But there's really not much in here that we did not cover.
Just one question.
Yeah.
One point you made in there. in the report, you talked about some of the purchase services are up and it's a timing issue, so that implies you expect that to sort of normalize.
It will level out some from where it is right now. It will not level out completely
It's not
from
going
where it
down.
is right now. And it seems like every 2 days we're taking on more
Right.
purchase services.
This will go a long ways towards informing the budget for next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Take roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rento?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
And the second item is the actual adoption of the 5-year forecast.
So moved.
Second.
Everyone should have a copy of the actual forecast, which I never put in the slides because you can't read it anyway. I did say everyone should have gotten a copy of the notes that will be going with the forecast in the communication on
Those were helpful.
Friday. Let me know if you like the new format or not. It's a different format than the past because again, our software now has a built-in note writing function, which makes life a lot easier, both for us on the writing end and hopefully for you folks on the receiving end. I will be submitting both to the state on Wednesday. I am out of the district tomorrow. So I will be submitting it on Wednesday with your approval.
Electronic submission.
Hmm?
It's an electronic submission.
It's all done electronically, yep.
Mike, thanks for pulling this together as always. You do a fantastic job. Also, thanks for sharing it with the Finance Committee recently. I think it's really important to have the public eyes on this, and I appreciate their heads up. I would say that we could use more folks on that committee. I think it's
Well,
not
I
a
think
super
if-
active time right now, because there's not a
Well,
lot of levy stuff going on.
It's also because
but-
I keep scheduling it at the same time as intermediate school strings concerts.
One thing or another.
There's
though,
always
you can never
something.
miss, you know?
This
You
is
can-
Granville.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if others know of people that are, passionate or inclined or would be willing to have eyes or ears on that,
Yeah.
it's a couple times a year and very worthwhile to have other people's perspective.
I
So,
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Any last questions about the 5-year forecast?
I'm a little clear on all the assumptions. Do you mind doing
If only if
Wow,
it's
you were
Katie.
so good at saying that. I was like, what?
Believe it. Alex,
No other questions?
good report.
Please,
Thank you.
Thank you. Very correct.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rento?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
I'm
I'm already quitting.
Yes.
Second. I'm already quitting my agenda.
Katie, second.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rento?
Sí, gracias.
Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice? Aye. Dr. Cornman?
Aye.